So I got up this morning and everything went pretty smooth. I have a pretty routine way of doing things every morning, and this morning I was running behind, and that's the truth. And there was a time in my life when I would get stressed about being behind. I would get stressed about being late, worried, anxious. And I just don't anymore. I very rarely wake up in an angry or depressed mood anymore. But yeah, so I was running behind, and a song that is now, I do believe, 30 years old popped into my head. Tracy Lawrence, Running Behind. So I put on that Sticks and Stones album, his debut album from back in, I believe it was 90, maybe 91. And of course now I'm listening to it through Apple Music, but I remember having a birthday party that year, and which I don't think I had very many birthday parties, and that was one of them. I believe I might have been 10, and my step grandmother, Miss Geraldine, who's gone on now, sweet lady, she bought me that, and on cassette. You know, back when you had the A and the B side and you had to flip it over. And I wore it out, man. I listened to it for years. And now I'm still listening to it. And I just put it on to hear that song. But I decided to go ahead and listen to the whole album. And it was like taking a time machine back. On my drive into work, I've got just enough time really to listen to an album, you know, about 35 minutes or so in the morning. Coming home's a little different because of traffic, but yeah, I listened to the whole album, and I thought about it a lot. I thought about the fact that, you know, Tracy Lawrence and everybody else during that time period was really up playing the show business side of country music. And you know, he had the colored Wranglers on. Probably most of the time he had on a pair of black Wranglers, cowboy cut jeans, had on the Wrangler brush popper shirts, you know, that had the crazy western designs on them. Made famous, Garth Brooks pretty much brought that really to the forefront, but young guys who were coming on the scene a little bit after Garth, like Tracy and Tracy Bird, and shoot, there's just a ton of them, man. All those cats were wearing the same clothes. Brooks and Dunn even wore some of that stuff back in the day. But yeah, the resistol hat and the mullet that Tracy Lawrence had, and Roper boots, you know, everything shined up. Definitely wouldn't go into no rodeo wearing that stuff that he was, or not participating in the rodeo anyway. But yeah, Tracy Lawrence, man, so crazy. All of those things that I just named, you know, all the clothing and the culture of that time has moved on. And that happens, But the cool thing about music, especially, is the fact that Tracy Lawrence, and I don't know if he does this or not, I don't, you know, some people would say it's egotistical or whatever to appreciate your own work, but he really should appreciate that, man. And, especially his first 3 or 4 albums, they were just great, and I know that there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to solo artists like himself getting out there and being made into a star, because all those other musicians that played on those albums played a big part. And then you got the management behind the scenes that pushed him, and he was a huge star, man. But there were a lot of huge stars. That was the 90s was just full of very, very talented country musicians, especially, and country singers. And they were operating on a template pretty much. I mean, Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson, George Strait, those guys kind of set the template for guys like Tracy Lawrence. George Strait especially, I mean, he set the template for everybody that came along, especially in the 90s, to do the kind of music that they were doing, because his music in the 80s just kept progressing and kept getting a more modern feel to it, even though it never lost its traditional sound, which was very, very interesting. And I think that you have to credit Tony Brown for a lot of that, his producer, and the fact that George was able to stick with some of the writers that wrote his songs all that time. But sorry, I digress. I'm getting off Tracy a little bit here, but Tracy Lawrence was phenomenal, man, and a big part. I remember seeing the video for Running Behind, and if I'm remembering right, he was like on the beach or something, like in all that cowboy get up. And it, of course I was a kid, but it felt fun. It felt like he was having a good time, like singing these country songs, and it really inspired me to be a singer, and just he was just another layer in the onion for me. I dug his stuff, man. And you can go on to the next album. The Alibis album's great. It's almost, well, hell, it might be as good as his debut album. It's arguable. Then the big one, I See It Now, which is funny, it's not available on Apple Music, so it makes you wonder. That's probably his biggest album, I See It Now. And I might like it the most out of all of his records. I think that Time Marches On came on after that one, and that song was huge. I don't think that album was as good. It had a lot of filler on it, I feel like, and so maybe I See It Now was his peak. Even saying that, though, if you go on That's How a Cowgirl Breaks a Young Man's Heart, was on that next album, and I can't remember the name of it. I can see it, though, because Tracy did an image change and shaved the old mustache off on that album cover and cut the mullet, and everybody was like, what is going on? Like, Lord have mercy, who told him to do that? Because he just, as most people do, they look different when you make that drastic a change to your appearance. But that was a good album too. Had some good songs on it. But I see it now. That album was Tracy Lawrence's peak, and again, there's nothing. Anytime you evaluate somebody's musical career, it gets kind of feeling gross to me to do that, because I'm just a fan, you know. I of course I play and sing myself, but no, I have no success compared to somebody like that. So for me to come off as a critic or whatever is, I don't like to do that. But I'm just speaking my opinion as a fan, and I just like for him to know that, 30 years later, somebody that's almost 40 is still listening to his debut album randomly, and still listening to a lot of his other music, and his music holds a place in my heart. And no need to rank it, really. No need to rank his peak and all that. That's just silly talk, I guess. But anyway, I just wanted to document the fact that Tracy Lawrence is a dang good country singer. And if you're not familiar with him, you probably should get familiar with him. Cheers, friends.